But here, on the very rim of known space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Hello.
Your co-host, Julie.
Hey, how you doing?
Your co-host, Thorsten.
Hello, hello.
Your co-host, Jacob.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal to 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel at this micro instant.
Great.
I know that's not Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it sounds like something.
That is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Oh.
I've actually used it before, but it felt like a nice callback. It's appropriate to bring it back.
And we also have your co-host, David.
Where's the ejection seat?
Hey, Fernando. So today, my friends, longtime listeners to this show know we have some beefs with some things. And
Long-time listeners, Brian? Long time?
Or anyone who has listened to this show at least once might figure it out.
If you have been there for any period of time longer than 6 days, you probably know there are some games we are very cross with.
Yeah, there are some games that were just very disappointed. I don't know if disappointed is a strong enough word, but it's
one of the big compounding efforts, because let's be honest, would we care that Elite Dangerous is mediocre if it weren't Elite?
I mean,
if it didn't have all the hype around it.
Well, let's get right into it then.
All right, just go.
Starting with Elite Dangerous. So we bring up Elite Dangerous a lot. We bring it up a lot. And that's because it started off so promisingly. It's a beautiful game, amazing sound design. Flying in and out of a station is still kind of thrilling, because it's like, what? It's just like, wow, look at all this. And
the actual core mechanics are fairly competent, yes.
Yeah, it's a great flight sim. It's a great flight game with amazing audio. But then you start playing it as a game and you're like, what the hell? Like, you don't realize it right away. Like, when you're low on money and like you don't have a lot of shields, you don't have a lot of weapons, it's like, oh, this is exciting. I might get shot down like at any moment. Ooh. And then you start getting more money and you get a bigger ship and like, ooh, now I can fly more cargo and make more money. Then you get to a certain point where you're like, wait a minute. I have a lot of money now. What do I do with it? Oh.
Yes, the problem is Elite. Well, the biggest one, in my humble and extremely narrow opinion, because there's a lot more, is simply the fact that it's a game that fundamentally has no end game to speak of. It tried to be sort of an MMO, sort of EVE Online, sort of like old Elite. And it kind of wound up being mediocre at everything because it didn't actually know how to make any of those work.
Like,
meshed together.
If they had just made a single player Elite, like Elite 2, which is, I think, still the best in the series.
Or they committed to being EVE Online and did that well.
Going the route of limited co-op, where you're only flying with a couple of people, and that's it. But you are flying as a squad.
I'd be fine with that.
I'd be fine with that. Yeah, but they tried to do everything.
They tried to do like the persistent world thing that didn't work because it both had minimal effect and also was extremely easy to game because of solo mode. So it just ended up being people just chucking resources into a station, unaffected by anyone trying to stop them.
I also think that Frontier is hostile to players, and I'll explain why. The last time I had fun with Elite...
Yeah, you'll have to.
Yeah, the last time I had fun with Elite, I found this trade run people were talking about. And it was this thing where you had to get this kind of this illegal cargo to a certain station in under 30 minutes. And if you even had the farthest jump drive, you would be lucky to make it in time. You would have to really push to make it in time. You'd have to scoop a little bit. It was really seat of the pants, seat of your pants, really exciting, and lucrative flying. And once Frontier found out about it, they killed it. They absolutely killed it.
Why? Because they think it's an exploit.
I mean, sure, but isn't a lot of life an exploit? I mean, that's what you do in life. You're like, hey, this thing works. I'm going to keep doing this thing.
Yes, but also I'll tell you what the issue was, is that it made a lot more money than other stuff, but instead of doing the thing where they buff other stuff and honestly adjust for inflation in EVE Online.
Or make the other stuff as much fun and lucrative.
Someone had actually mapped out that bounty hunting and combat would match up in terms of effort per hour and profit per hour to stuff like mining, only if you boosted the rewards by a factor of 10.
Oh, for God's sakes.
At least 10. At least 10.
At least an order of magnitude.
Oh my God.
Which is annoying because combat in that game is actually pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't make you any money. And the risk is, at one point, the risk is just too high.
Now, that would be fair if there was other things to get in this game besides money. There aren't. In Elite, you rack up the highest, rack up the biggest number, and you spend the biggest number on the biggest ship.
And then what?
And you're done. Once you get a maxed out Anaconda, you're set.
I mean, yeah, exactly, Savmass. When you get all the money, what do you do with it? Nothing. Even Jumpgate eventually added player-owned stations because a lot of players had a ton of money, and they're like, "What do we do with all this money?" And they added player-owned stations, and that worked brilliantly because not only could you buy different sizes of stations had different upgrades, and they were all very expensive, and they had maintenance.
And also, they're committing to the whole being a sort of MMO thing with persistent marks left on by the players, rather than just being. It genuinely feels like, despite having the biggest, most fancy and expensive ship, you just kind of like a background character. A background character in a game that someone else is the protagonist of. You don't know who that is, but that's just how it feels like.
It's sort of like Brox.
Whoa. Okay, wait.
Great. Okay, go ahead, Thorsten. I'll
Thorsten and Spaz.
Okay, me first. You want to know what you do with all this money? Well, you are alone in this pretty much empty universe, and a player like me, playing not at this game for 3 years at least, hops in just to see what's going on right now, and gank this lone player that hasn't played this game for 3 years. Simply because you have a bigger ship. Great. That's gameplay.
You bully people.
It's emergent. It's emergent gameplay, you guys.
Yes, I don't think I will touch ED for the next year.
Oh God.
Yeah, that was really a disappointing experience. I really loved. I can't really say it. I really loved the first few minutes I played it, and I even loved that I met another player, and then this happened. Okay, thank you.
People,
again,
what a bunch of bastards.
Being like Drox. I see it kind of like being as the way that Drox operative is set up, except that instead of being one of the operatives, you are one of the NPCs flying around in that world. Yes. You don't really have much ability to affect what's going on, and
which would almost be fine if the game didn't pretend you did. Fresh reminded, that's not exactly different from Tier Elite 2. In Elite 2, you're a guy with a boat. And it's fine to have games about being a guy on a boat, but make the boat part interesting. Make it so you have. I wouldn't even argue. The problem is the game tries to make it so you have like this big effect on reality without actually letting you be part of anything larger in a meaningful way? Like,
Well,
even
of course they can't. Of course they can't, because if they allow that, then it's sort of like in an MMO where the quest must reset. Because if they don't, then only the first person or people who do it are actually going to have any tangible benefits. Everybody else, the story's already been resolved. They don't have a chance to do that thing again. So you can't have that much effect on the greater world. And as a direct result of this, Elite is less than the sum of its parts.
Yes, unless you're EVE Online and have a player-built world, which I will bring up a lot of comparisons. Only not because I think EVE is good. I don't think it's bad, but I don't believe it belongs a spot on this show. I do not believe EVE is like belongs a spot in this podcast. Bad.
No, I mean, I think with EVE, you know what you have a better indication of what you're getting into from jump. And so you're much less likely to be disappointed.
You're getting into like brutalist ANCAP hell of an MMO with spaceships. And if you enjoy that sort of environment, then more power to you.
Yeah. As far as comparisons go, though, it's fair when they directly relate to what we're talking about.
Yes, because it seems like Elite tried to be EVE Online and then just failed at it spectacularly.
They just gave up. Gave up.
Okay. The thing about EVE now, I didn't play Elite Dangerous because I could never get past the tutorial. I said, where the heck is the door to the spaceship?
I don't know if their onboarding has gotten better since then, but I don't think so.
As far as EVE Online is concerned, I think one, it's a fair comparison, but two, it's when I got involved in this, now mind you, I've seen the thing with the learning curve. It was like falling off a cliff, right? And
the learning cliff.
I and the people that I played with were interested in the industry part of it. And this, I played for 6 years, and a lot earlier part of the 6 years of the existence of EVE Online. And it didn't start out with a bunch of exploitative bullies who when you say, well, what are we going to do with our money? Well, since we'll get blasted out of space with our spaceships anyway, when we try and gank people in high space, that's what we're going to do with our money. And it's emerging gameplay, but emergent gameplay can benefit the players if it's something that keeps the game going for a long time, because then you deal with a situation where, what do we do when we get to the end? Well, sometimes people think, here's what we do when we get to the end. Sometimes it's just bank setting. But when it becomes self-destructive behavior in the end run, it can take the whole game down. And I know a lot of people may disagree with me, but I think that's part of what happened with CCP. And so I think a lot of their emergent gameplay was just destructive. And when I got into it, I didn't know what I was getting into it. And if you've seen some of their ads for now, they have this Android version of the game, and their hype is about how welcoming it is and how wonderful it is. And yet, if you get online, that's if you're rich enough to get past the microtransactions. In some places, you'll just get ganked in the first 5 minutes. And it's like, well, that's what the emergent gameplay is. That's what people do. And so I didn't know what I was getting into. And it has, but, it's truly a case of I wish I knew then what I know now. And now the people I know, when I talk about it, they just say, going back, they said, just lay down until the feeling goes away, Julie.
So going back to Elite real quick. If y'all don't know the news, David Braben, who is basically the guy behind Elite since Elite, he's stepping down as the CEO of Frontier. And so we don't know what that's going to mean for Elite. You know, we don't know if are they going to shut it down, or is it going to like free up the creative juices and now it's going to start going in a different direction? We don't know. We have no idea, but we think something probably big is going to happen because he's been a huge driving force behind this game since like for its entire
day one.
Yes, day one. I always think of time bandits when I hear day one.
I'm really not sure about that because the main design of the game was a different person. I don't know how much control he had above Elite Dangerous in the past few years.
Yeah, there's a difference between CEO and lead design.
Yes,
they don't necessarily have to be the same role.
Yeah, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it if they started adding more meaningful gameplay. Like if the missions didn't feel so rote, and I didn't have to grind endlessly just to make my ship a tiny bit better. You know, like
I mean, Elite was always about grind. The grind, but
it felt better in the older games. Like the grind felt a lot better.
Yes.
Like you made a lot more money. You know, you progressed a lot faster. Like
that was felt progress.
Yeah. You felt like you were progressing. It felt good because it was single player. So it didn't. Who cares if it's a little unbalanced? Oh, all the players are gonna. No, you fucking single player, and then you can just do whatever you want. But no, when you add other players, that's when everything gets ruined, I think. But
yeah, they just tried to bolt it in, like, because they didn't commit to it being an MMO. Because it's not. It's got like weird instancing.
Which doesn't work.
But it took like 3 years for it to add actual party mechanics.
God, right.
Yeah,
Remember how excited we all were for Wings, and then it was shit? and apparently they've added I've never tried it, but apparently you can fly in the same ship now, but that doesn't work very well either.
There's multi-crew. It sucks. And you know why it sucks? You know why both Wings and multi-crew suck? Because Wings splits profits, and multi-crew like gives you like a tiny cut. And in a game where you have a slow grind, where your only meaningful choice of progress is money, unless you're making the most money, you're just wasting your time. I did not want to make this into satire, but I guess that's where we're going now.
You can't make it up.
So can I tell a story from Elite?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So, did you guys hear about, this is all about community groups, player groups and stuff. Do you know about those, Jacob?
Yeah, they're useless. They're absolutely useless. I started one in the game.
They're not an in-game. Are they an in-game feature?
They are in the game, but they do nothing. They do absolutely nothing.
Squadrons.
Yeah.
Is it like a clan tag?
Yeah, basically, and when you could see each other, like, oh, they're over there and they're over there. They do basically nothing. They don't add anything to the gameplay. Effectively.
You know, if the game launched with that, I would be fine.
No,
but I know it didn't.
Took them like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, the story is about East India Trading Company, EIC for short. So they were a player group, I guess they're still active, and were housed in one system at the time. And yeah, you know how the background simulation works in the Elite and stuff, but so some players actually found out there was an ongoing war in that system. So people went there to war so they can get combat vouchers and stuff, get paid for it. East India Trading Company did not like it, because they actually almost were about to lose control over that system. So they made a lockdown. Any players joining in, hopping into that system in open were blown up immediately.
Woof.
Not even sending out a message or anything. They were blown up right away.
Wow.
It's an Eve Gate cab.
Yeah.
Now, that's fair if that was like a core game mechanic. And also, the game was built around the fact that not everywhere you can do that. I know I keep making comparisons to EVE Online, but that's because this game tried to be EVE Online and just fell so flat on its face.
Yep, and that's one of those moments.
Uh,
So they were actually trying to police the entire solar system. So what did players do instead? Well, they joined solar and private groups instead, and continued to wage war over there. And then they would reach out to the official forums and were complaining about other players, like, "Oh, this is our solar system. Why are you ruining our fun?" So that was pretty fun to see.
I mean, it's bad design. That's definitely true.
I mean, I don't know. Go
Got
ahead.
to share another story.
Go for it.
Actually, the time I most enjoyed this game, and it was the most fun, was when we managed to get 3 or 4 players together, all with small ships, and take down somebody with a completely engineered anaconda. And that was really, really a fun coincidence. Sadly, it happened only one time. It was the first time in this game. I really enjoyed it, and it felt really emerging. But it happened only one time. Every time we tried to start another run in this direction, we didn't find any players. That was pretty sad.
Oh.
Let's change tack for just a moment here.
Okay, good.
I want to throw in, because I don't want to just be reductive about the game. While we can be, absolutely, we could be.
Oh, yeah.
How about a positive? Just consider.
Elite does several things right. Its flight engine is fantastic. The feeling of weight for each ship and how they fly differently. I mean, the flight in the game is fantastic. Like, just flying around is great. And the sound and the music are second to none. The audio in this game...
different thing that I was going to mention, though. There was something different I was going to mention as a positive, which is that Elite was at the forefront of the space game renaissance that we saw over the last decade.
Oh, yeah. So was Star Citizen.
True.
Yeah, because...
Exactly.
Because these two games did so well via crowdfunding, people were like... Hey, people actually want space games, which is what people like me have been saying for a decade and a half, but whatever, but no, people, Elite and Star Citizen both showed people, sorry to hijack Spaz, but it showed people that, hey, people actually want space games, and then developers started making their own. FTL came out around the same time. And also showed, exactly, people want space games. So you can... in a weird sideways way, thank these games for the current resurgence of space games we're undergoing.
But
it's just
it's a very roundabout way of the fact that they had done what they did at the time they were successful. A lot of other indie space games were actually in the works at that time and came out not long afterward and were able to ride that wave. And then others were seeing what happened with Elite and Star Citizen and decided I should make my own game now and do something
exactly
better or different.
Because it's gonna take like 100 years for either to come out.
It showed potential developers that, hey, there is a market for this. People want spaceship games. People want games in space. And it's not just games from Europe.
Here's a comparison to business. And as far as you can look at some games like Elite Dangerous and say, oh, gee, this wasn't, it wasn't, there are a lot of problems with it. It isn't what we expected it. But, and I won't go too deep into the government program, but there's this one area in Chicago. And where I work, we had a program to try and turn it around. And the program itself never made any money, right? But wasn't designed to that. And I was just a young intern. And my boss at the time said, but you didn't see this place before we started this program here and built up the area just a little bit. The program was designed to turn the area around. It was like Skid Row before, and when sometimes you can have a good game like Elite, and all it has to do is be in the right place at the right time to just spark a renaissance and turn things around.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, because that's exactly, in their own weird ways, that's exactly what Star Citizen and Elite did. They really lit the spark that started,
So,
yeah.
now that we've, I think, finished-ish ranting about Elite, unless that we could come back to it later.
Sure.
Star Citizen!
Yeah.
I just wanted to say
Yeah.
that now I was one of the people who drank the Kool-Aid early on.
So
as
yeah,
far as
me too.
Star Citizen.
Me too.
And I am the reason, because of that, on this other podcast, that a friend of mine invested she looks at it as invested $6,000 in it. My problem is not with the game. It can be, if it's ever finished, a really good game. My problem with Star Citizen is not the game, it's who's running it and the structure of anything that's crowdfunding. Because what Chris Roberts did is put a big emphasis on what happens with crowdfunding. There's no financial oversight, so he can take the money and do what he wants. He can wipe his butt on $100 bills if he feels like it. He can use it to light his cigars if he wants it. And I've seen this in business. If you have somebody with no financial oversight, then you end up with a situation where one day push comes to shove and everybody comes a running, and you say, well, what happened? How can it have developed to this point? Well, if he has some oversight to start with, instead of everybody saying, hand him the money, then there wouldn't be this problem. But part of the problem that Star Citizen has had the problems it is not because of Chris Roberts. A large part of it is because of the gamers. It comes back on us. Who gave him the money in the first place? Who keeps saying, even though he got trouble in Europe for just selling JPEGs when there was nothing behind it, who keeps buying the JPEGs? If everybody voted with their dollars, none of this garbage would happen. The game would either be finished or just a dream or a bad nightmare. Did say this was like the Grievance show. And
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's just, yeah, Star Citizen, I too invested in, I not only bought the base package when it was announced, but I bought 3 or 4 other ships.
It's okay. Okay, so the nuclear grade take incoming. Do you think Star Citizen and its concept of selling ships that aren't there was a prelude to NFTs?
No, I think NFTs would have happened even without Star Citizen.
Yes, but am I the only one who feels like they're the same flavor?
It's a very, very similar in the way things are sold, but not exactly the same. Similar selling tactics, but not necessarily the same, because you can't resell a ship that you got from that you bought of Star Citizen to someone else. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah.
See,
you can't make a profit off of selling it to someone else.
Actually, you can. And
well,
I did. It's not in the game. You got to go through Reddit and shit, but you can do it.
Well,
what?
Okay, the aftermarket, it's like account selling sort of thing. Okay, fine, that exists, but
yeah,
again, it's not the same thing as in NFT where it's a speculative market.
Fair enough. So it's a closed cycle bullshit seller.
Where the comparison falls short is something, at least in American law, I was a paralegal early on in my career, is something called implied warranty of merchantability. And that is, somebody sells you an NFT, they can point to an existing market and say, it has value. This is what it was made for. With selling something for just a JPEG for something that's supposed to exist virtually, anything that is sold, no matter what it is, has to be able to be used for the purpose for which it was built. If I build a car, unless you tell me ahead of time, you can't sell me a car without an engine. And so what the problem was, is Chris Robert was selling just the picture and saying, this is something that's in game or going to be in game, and it's just a picture, and so it doesn't meet that standard.
Well, at one point, they gave away a bunch of shirts to people who had bought the game. I'm not talking about real shirts. I'm talking about purely digital ones.
Wait, what?
They gave away a bunch of shirts. Yeah.
What?
Smell the value from here.
Curious now.
Wait. Hang on. They gave not real.
They gave digital T-shirts to a bunch of digital T-shirts away to promote Star Citizen to people who had already paid for it.
I just got one with a picture of a bull on it. They said it was a bull shirt. That's all I got. I never got my shirt.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I think when Chris Roberts came back, a lot of us, and myself included, forgot the lessons we had learned from Freelancer. If you recall, with Freelancer originally was this hugely ambitious. I saw an early version of it as a thing. It was so much more ambitious than it ended up being. And Microsoft eventually fired Chris Roberts for taking too long to make Freelancer, and they had to pare it back, way back from what he was actually trying to do. And we still got a good game out of it, ultimately, because the people who did paring back did a good job. You know, they made it into an excellent game.
Freelancer is really good.
Yeah, exactly.
So it does, I will say, Freelancer does feel like 3/4 of a game. I will say that.
Yeah.
That does explain a lot.
Yeah.
Freelancer was fun, but it distinctly felt like a game that was like dropped at some point.
Yeah, there are times when you'll run into a thing in Freelancer. You're like, shouldn't there be more here in this like ice field or something? Like, there's nothing. So like there are times when Freelancer you'll run into like, wow, there should be more here. But ultimately they delivered a good game. Years late and over budget. And again, they had to fire Chris Roberts to do it.
Sacrifices had to be made.
Exactly. And I think when he came back, all we remember was, oh my God, Wing Commander. No, I think none of us wanted to remember what happened with Freelancer.
Wiped from collective memory.
Yeah. So, I mean, but Freelancer turned out okay in spite of Chris Roberts, basically. Not because of. Yes, exactly. But, a lot of us still positively associated with him with it. So we're like, oh, yay, boy. I bought the ship, The Freelancer, because I love Freelancer. And the longer the game went, like, we're all like, oh, right. This is why he got out of gaming. Right.
Oh, this sucks.
He wanted to make movies. That's what he really wants to do. That's why
how did that turn out?
That's how "quote unquote" Squadron 42 has Gary Oldman and Mark Hamill and whatnot in it. But
I would appreciate it if the damn thing came out first.
I mean, a lot of us, that's what we wanted. We wanted a new Freelancer. We wanted a new Wing Commander. That's all we wanted.
Okay, I'm willing.
Yes.
I'm willing to make a bet. I'll let you finish in a second, but I'm willing to make a bet straight up. I will actually play Squadron 42 if it ever comes out. I will buy it and I will play it to completion. Is it ever going to happen? No. But if it does happen, I'll play it.
I agree.
Yeah, like they barely talk about it anymore. Like I don't think anything's being done with. I get emails because I'm a backer, so I get emails. They barely talk about Squadron 42 anymore, which is what I wanted.
Dalston.
I remember the headlines back in 2019. Squadron 42 comes this year. Oh yes.
Did they say
We
that?
have 2022. Yeah. I still wait.
My grandmother, who was in business, also would have put it this way. The problem isn't so much the game as the people running it. And when you give people the money for free, my grandmother would have simply looked at people like Chris Roberts and say, well, the problem is, why would you buy the cow when you're getting the milk for free? And he's getting the milk for free, and nobody is calling him to task. And if it wasn't for Chris Roberts at the helm and people like him, and my understanding that he continues to drive people away from his employment, but if it were people who are more responsible, the game would be out by now. And yes, somebody brought up feature creep. That is one of the biggest problems. Is and the same thing from what you tell me, Elite Dangerous is you can't have a game that's everything to all people. Pick one and do it,
or even a few things, as long as you do them well. The issue that a lot of us have seen over the years, and I was not a backer of Star Citizen, so I can say this from an outsider's perspective, that I don't think it started to be a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme of any sort. However, over the years, the people who are really invested and put their identity behind seeing this happen, they really want other people to buy in because of sunk cost fallacy. They put so much money into it, it would be a real disappointment to them if it didn't happen. So they try to get other people to buy in, because as long as other people are buying in, then obviously the devs are going to keep working on it, right? That's how that works, isn't it? So from an outsider's perspective, I can say that's where it's going. It's turned into this speculative pyramid scheme of, we really want this to happen, and the more people we get to buy into it, the better the chances it's going to happen, even if some of us are going to be great grandparents by the time that happens, if ever.
Well, what is also feeding into that are, like I said, it wouldn't continue to happen if gamers didn't let it continue to allow it to happen. And what has happened is, yes, I get the things in my inbox all the time, and as soon as you try and talk about that on the open airwaves, it's become a cult, and very much and if you try and downplay it, people will tell you you're nuts, and they'll say, oh yeah, see, you can play it, but I said it's not a full game, it's not released, it's been in development for so long, it should have. I was one of the early people who bought the Kool-Aid, and now I feel bad, not just because of Chris Roberts mismanaging this whole thing, but I feel bad because I bought the Kool-Aid and I convinced I was one of the people that said, yeah, this is going to turn out great. And I think that Spaz is right. I think, Fernando, I don't think it started out to be a scam. I think it ended up being that way. And I don't think Chris Roberts himself thinks it's a scam. I don't know him personally. I know somebody who probably would, but I think you can just convince yourself after a while.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it started as a scam. I think it started as an actual legitimate, thing to make a game, But then so much money started rolling in, and they had to keep
they make more money by not completing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Like once they finish it, the money is going to slow to a trickle. So,
I've seen secondhand what insane scope creep looks like. I have a friend who writes tabletop role playing games. I've shown you her stuff before, Brian, Flying Circles and so on. She is extremely bad at keeping her projects reined in.
Oh no!
I'll give you a brief. I'll give you a short example. She tried to make a small expansion to a freaking playing game she had that was like tanks. It was supposed to be 8 tanks and like a page of rules. It's now a 250-page expansion.
Oh God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've seen how this sort of stuff happens, and this sort of stuff happens is mostly because you don't have a set release date. But also because you always look for things that you could do better and scale out. And there is no such there is no project in like gaming or in art that has like a hard level of that's how good you can get. You have to know how to set an upper limit to your projects, otherwise they will just escalate into infinity.
Part of also the problem is in some areas of business, it's like real estate, for example. There's an option to buy. You can't just sit there ad infinitum. It expires at a certain date. You put up equity, and if you go past that date, that's it. Everybody out of the pool, the deal's over with. And you have investors to answer to. There are no investors to answer to. There's no law that says you have to have this done by a certain date. And yes, if Chris Roberts was still working for some place like a Microsoft, he would have been fired a long time ago.
Well, there's also the notion of, well, how should I put this? There's the notion of the people who backed the game seeing themselves as investors. And to an extent, now let me clarify on that too, because to some extent that sort of thing actually does exist. There's a site called Fig. Fig is a crowdfunding platform where you can back games, but you can also back them as an investor as opposed to
that the one that Homeworld 3 got like the rest of its budget on?
There are some other games that have been backed through it as well. I don't know about Homeworld 3 specifically. I cannot say for certain offhand. But other games have been backed through Fig. I've backed a few myself through Fig as a backer and not as an investor. And there's a lot of good stuff that has come out of that. But with Kickstarter, some people see themselves as investors rather than as just a backer of a dream. To an extent.
In that case, you should, if anything, be far more demanding of Chris Roberts, who refuses to give you a return of investment.
Right. Yeah. Except with Kickstarter, you're joining as a backer and not as an investor. So there is sort of that tribalist mentality of, well, we back this, we have a stake in it, so we need to make sure that it succeeds. And that kind of leads into that feedback loop of, well, we bought into this, we need to see it through, even though as a backer you've already done your part. You've given the money and you've done your part.
Are an investor, you should be far more critical of what's going on, because investors are looking for a return on investment.
Yeah,
it's the point of the exercise. I only made it through like a year and a half of economy in university, but even I know that much.
Well, this is what happens in business, and I've spent 30 years as a project manager, and you have people who do not have a great degree of knowledge in a particular area. You can say people need to look at something as an investor, but they don't. Why? Because they don't understand. You got people with a lot of money who don't. And you look at it in, again, another analogy is real estate. Chicago used to have somebody named Tom Wu late at night, and people would say, hey, I want one of those dollar homes. And I would say, well, there are no dollar homes, because the dollar home you're looking at is sold to someone who has to pay that has to pay the real estate taxes, because the real estate taxes are worth more than the property is, and has to rehab the property. And so you get people who come with more money and they don't understand. And they don't know that this is an investment, because they've been misled by people marketing this thing, whether it's intentional or not. And it's not an investment, but the people backing this don't understand that. And I see that in business all the time. It's like, if it's an investment, it has to have a reasonable chance of a return on your investment. Otherwise, all it is Chris Roberts on the street corner with an empty cup, and you're dropping a $100 bill in his cup.
Well, even in a case like that, you're getting good karma if you're helping someone out that way. But Chris Roberts doesn't need that kind of karma. He's already rich. So the question is, at that point, how responsible are the gamers for not just backing it? Because a lot of the people who backed it because of his previous projects, fair. But the people who are backing it now, jumping on the bandwagon now, how responsible should they feel? And I'm leaving that as an open question. How responsible should they feel for backing it now after all the years of what we've seen so far?
Spare.
Well, look at it this way. And this is, and the thing is, part of what's been built up around the idea of backing a developer, and it didn't start out with backing somebody who's big time, who's rich. It started out with somebody that has a dream and just wants to get ahead. And then you ended up with things like Richard Garriott saying, I want XYZ number of $1 million to develop my latest project, which ended up failing. And it's like, you are already rich enough to afford $30 million to go to the space station. And after your lawsuit, when you got back, you got the same $30 million back. Stop asking people who aren't rich like you to give you even more money. But there's no law that governs any of this.
Why would there be?
Well, that's why in some cases there's a movement to start laws that govern NFTs. But right now it's just the Wild West. And people, it's a matter, I think, of, more of a lack of education, of somebody understanding what an investment is and what an investment isn't. And an investment isn't just, if I give somebody a donation, I can't say I'm going to expect this to become a full-fledged game, because there's always got to be knowledge that says it's never going to happen. So once you give the money away, it's like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And with Kickstarter, they even put in their disclaimers that Kickstarter is not a store. If you back something on Kickstarter, there's no 100% guarantee that you will get what is promised in your pledge tier. Now, from the development side of things, or the creator side of things, the creator has to make best efforts in order to see it happen. If it doesn't happen, they're still not necessarily financially liable, and part of the reason is because you're not backing as an investor, you're backing as a backer. And there are cases where a project dies because the creator does, dying of an illness or whatever else, or there might be a project where someone has a head injury and is no longer able to continue the work. Or in one of the cases, I backed a project where the developer ended up having a nervous breakdown, not because of games necessarily, but because of other things, and sincerely apologized and said, I'm not able to complete this. And nobody seemed really mad about it because, well, things happen like that.
I might add, actually, in both cases you mentioned, I backed both projects too. And it's fully understandable that it didn't work out. I mean, there are here and then a few bad comments on Steam on the one project, but it's given how many people already backed it or bought it back then, it's relatively small, and that's pretty interesting in my opinion. So people can be forgiving if the reasons are there.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be that way, but as long as the person has been communicative up to that point, or people involved have been communicative up to that point, then if it doesn't happen, if for some reason it doesn't happen, and I'm not specifically talking about these two games, I'm talking about in general, if a game you back doesn't happen because of external circumstances happening to the developer, and you backed it, you can't be too mad about it. You probably could be frustrated, sure, maybe sad that it didn't happen, but your involvement was helping them get it made with the money you gave to them. And that's really all you can do. You might be able to give them feedback if they want it, but that's about it. The rest is on them. And if they can't finish it for whatever reason, well, then it doesn't get finished.
That's a they problem.
I mean, if you just as an additional note, if you think back to one of the projects, you could sadly see it in the developers' videos, and how he spoke in the last three videos he made, and that was pretty sad to watch. Seriously.
Yeah. Considering the circumstances, and that is completely understandable because you can't help that. The players might say, well, maybe you can bring someone else in, but it's the developer's baby. Bringing in other people won't necessarily make the players happy, because the project they get at the end will probably not be what was originally intended. So it is better, I would say, in cases like that, for the project to end on whatever status they are, than have someone else try to take it over and maybe take it in a completely different direction.
Yeah, like the poor limit theory guy. Like,
that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Without directly saying, yeah.
Sorry, I had to step away for a minute. My cat was meowing about something, and I wanted to make sure like no one was breaking into the apartment. So,
well, you think about people who when they think they're investing and they put money into a Kickstarter, nothing is outrageous an example as the Zach Brown guy. He had a Kickstarter to make a bowl of potato salad, and he ended up with $55,000.
wait, what?
Yep.
A guy named Zach Brown. It was Kickstarter, and he was making a point. He was going to say, okay, I'm raise $10 to make a bowl of potato salad. He ended up with $55,000. Now, it ended up being a whopping lot of potato salad, and he donated the rest to charity. But, it's the mentality of people who are, you can't entirely blame the people who are getting the money, is the point I'm making. Chris Brown isn't the entirety of who's at fault. It's a lack of education, understanding, and I'm not talking about these people must have got their degree out of a Cracker Jack box kind of thing. It's just more like a lack of common sense. And so they say, yeah, sure, here's $10, here's $10, here's $10. Before you know it, the guy's got $55,000 to make a bowl of potato salad.
Dear God. That is astounding. So we've bitched about Elite, and we've whined about Star Citizen. Wasn't there something else that we wanted to get off our chests? Can't remember. I know there was. Someone mentioned. Okay, go ahead, Jacob.
Okay, no. I want to... Because here's the thing. When I first joined the podcast and when I first found the podcast, there was game number 3 I would have wanted to mention. But, okay, it's No Man's Sky. Spaz, take it away.
Well, that's a little different, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, but I wanted to mention it.
yeah, yeah. The case of No Man's Sky. A lot of people were hyped about it, right?
Yep.
And I am one of the people who loved it at launch. So I'm on record. I loved it at launch. I got it right after launch. I was happy with it. And I am still happy with it to this day because they've continually made that game better and just continually added more and more features to it to where, if you look at it now, it is much bigger and much better than what was already promised prior to its initial launch.
And it's pretty
Multiplayer is in.
And it's astounding that they haven't asked for money for any of those things.
I was about to mention that.
Yeah, I think the reason why they have not done any DLC that is paid DLC is because they got so much bad press and so much of a poor reception early on. And I think they decided that they were not going to charge for any updates. You know, releasing anything that the expeditions, for example, that have been they've been pretty spectacular. They had the Normandy tie-in with Mass Effect. That coincided with the remaster. They had a whole bunch of other stuff that has happened in these expeditions that they've made it completely better. And they haven't asked for money because they realized, I'm sure, that they got all this goodwill because of how they turned things around, and they would lose a lot of it if they started charging for DLC.
Yeah, the game has 0 DLC as of right now.
And now, I'm not going to say they will never do it, but I don't think they're going to anytime soon.
How do you think they're still paying the bills then? By continual sales of the game because it's still good? Because it's good now?
Yes. Yeah, it goes on sale pretty regularly, too. And the player counts jump up every time there's an expedition, I've noticed. And every time they announce a new major update, they get a whole bunch of new people playing.
That is the one big upside of like huge updates. It's what fighting games do a lot. It's what games like Guilty Gear, Strive do a lot. If you have like a big update that adds a lot of stuff, people will actually join in because that generates publicity. People will go, oh, new stuff, and they get in.
See, also bear in mind with No Man's Sky, I compare it to the anniversary edition of Skyrim, you know, and it's like, which I didn't buy, obviously, but it's like, okay, what's this anniversary update? Oh, well, you can fish and there's 4 more quests. You know, it's in a bit of an exaggeration, but not much. But, you know, when somebody does an update in No Man's Sky, it is usually a very large change to the game. There was an update where, okay, now you can manage your own settlement. And the latest expedition, I logged on and I said, wow, the inside of my spaceship actually looks like the inside of a spaceship now. It's never been a little thing. It's something that they could actually charge for as a DLC, and they always just give it away.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a case of goodwill.
Yeah.
That they're doing it the way they are. Because if they wanted to, now, granted, they do have merch. You can actually buy merch for No Man's Sky, but that is all external. It's not.
And
it's
also,
not
the same goes for Elite, and the same goes for No Man's Sky. Oh boy! So the same goes for Star Citizen.
And a lot of people. Sorry, go ahead.
The difference is No Man's Sky has 0 microtransactions. It's merch, but it's not inside the game.
Yeah. I mean, you can buy, clothing and stuff. Yeah, sure. There's physical merch that you can get, but there's no requirement. You don't get any tangible benefits to doing that. So, really, it is a case of they've earned this goodwill. They've clawed back. They hunkered down when they launched, and then they just clawed their way back up, and they earned that goodwill.
You know what's interesting? I know not everyone plays Elite Dangerous on Steam, but I just looked at the player numbers for both No Man's Sky and Elite. Right now, there are about 5,000 people playing Elite via Steam. There are over 14,000 people playing No Man's Sky.
Okay,
There's also an expedition that's currently in progress.
Right, but
Yes.
I think that tells you the power of goodwill. And
What I was
Yeah.
gonna say is the numbers were probably so bad it booted me out of Discord.
wait, what happened?
We lost
Discord just
Jacob
like-
for a second.
My Discord
crap.
just like had a random refresh. It just like crashed out
What the what?
when before you said the freaking numbers.
Yeah, so it's about 5,000 for Elite and about little over 4. The peak so far today has been over 15,000 for No Man's Sky. I mean, I think that right there is saying something. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
the numbers are always higher when there's an expedition in play because when you play the expedition, it's like seasonal stuff in Inquisition. You have a character that can't interact with anyone who's not already on the same expedition as you. So you could still have your other save files going, but if you're on the expedition, you're only with the other people who are on that expedition at the time. So that's a big deal, and especially since it's an 8-week expedition, you have a lot of people who are in it.
So those numbers go down for No Man's Sky when there's no expedition.
Only by bit. I mean, you can look at the number track, but it always goes up by a lot when there's an expedition going.
I've got an actual gripe about No Man's Sky.
Ooh.
When it comes out to Switch this fall, it won't be multiplayer. It'll only be single player. Now, I'm not too upset about that, but I was hoping it would be multiplayer. But
It's an understandable gripe.
but this is still. It's like I still find myself amazed that that game fits on the Switch, and at all. And this is like when someone says, "Oh, their Skyrim is on the Switch." I said, "What?" But of course now somebody said, "Oh, pregnancy testers." Someone got Skyrim to work on one of those, and so still, I'm pleased it's going to be there at all. But I've always enjoyed the other players in No Man's Sky, and that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, according to Steam charts, like even month over month, there are more people playing No Man's Sky than Elite on Steam. It's just the numbers are crazy. It's kind of sad.
What's funny about No Man's Sky is that with the last update, one of the last couple of updates, they even increased the fun of flying, where you could sort of slide your ship depending on how you have it equipped. You can have different upgrades that cause your ship to slide rather than just slow down. So you can sort of drift. It's interesting. It's really interesting.
Oh, they're making I don't have to jump back in there if they're making the space stuff better.
Also, don't forget that now you can have your own squadron, even if you're playing single player. So you can do the whole pilot to bombardier thing, and a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can have up to 4 NPC wingmates that you hire, by the way. You actually go up to them and you like the look of their ship, you hire them onto your squadron.
And if you want to be a space pirate, there are pirate stations now. So you can be a space pirate and rob the NPCs blind if you want, not players, just the NPCs.
Oh, that might be my jam. I do enjoy some good space piracy.
And you mentioned just wanting to do missions, Brian. You could ignore the main story completely if you really want to. You could very early on start up a game, and then you get asked whether or not you want to follow the Path of Atlas when you're on your first planet. And if you just say you don't want to follow it, then you can skip the main story and just take on whatever missions you want at the space stations, or fly into a pirate station in a pirate system, and then fly missions for them. If you just want to fly missions, you have ways to do that.
Oh, really? You can just fly into a station and get missions and stuff?
Yes, that's been in there for years.
Plus, there's
jeez.
a player hub where you can get missions, but you don't have to do it with other people, but you can if you wanna.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, for God's sakes!
I've told you about this before. You just never really dove into it.
No, I have it installed right now because I keep hearing how much fun this expedition thing is. So I have it installed right now. I'm gonna try it.
It's hard for me to find something to gripe about with No Man's Sky. I'm right there with
that's
with Spaz. I enjoyed it from the start.
That is like the opposite of the show topic for today. Is in my opinion, is No Man's Sky, because like it's been such a Cinderella story. Just
Jeremiah brings up a good point here. Some people think No Man's Sky is bad just due to the launch, and there is someone we used to have on our Discord who actually got insulting because they had said that No Man's Sky is a terrible game, and anyone who supports that game now, this was years after the fact, that they said that whoever supports that game now is stupid. They got really aggressive about it too, and ended up getting banned from the Discord.
Yeah, was that like the one who like freaking? I don't remember what it was. Yeah, that was years back.
They got very, very insulted by the launch, and thought that anyone who supported that game now was, being a shill, or just as if the game is exactly in the same state it was at launch 5 years later, or something to that effect.
There's a lot to what Jeremiah said. There's a lot to that, because look at the reputation Bethesda developed before it was purchased, and actually ZeniMax, but they had a reputation for coming out with games before they were ready, and the games usually had more bugs than an Orkin Man. And early on, it was the players themselves that had to fix it. Fortunately, Bethesda gave the players the wherewithal to fix it, but that hasn't stopped being Skyrim, even 10 years later, being one of the most immersive games that's ever come out. And it didn't start that way, but a bad reputation is a hard thing to get rid of. It's something that's easy to get and it's hard to get back.
Now, Captain Ply mentions that they still own No Man's Sky on PS4, but don't enjoy playing it. I don't know if you've played it recently, but it does feel different now. I have it on PS4 and PC, so I could say, compared to how it was even just a few years ago, it feels very different.
Yeah, like I only started playing it years ago, and it every big update adds a lot. That it's just such a really impressive thing that maybe you should revisit. If you still don't like it, fine, but give it another shot. Because
the big combat update a few updates ago really did change up the space combat, and now that you have a squadron, the squadron doesn't really do all that much, but they do take on some of the fire for you. So it's a little bit like the buddies in Rebel Galaxy Outlaw. It won't necessarily change the nature of the fight, but it will divert some of the fire away from you.
Plus, my own personal bingo is this fall you will be able to play it on Switch, and you won't have to leave. You won't have to leave your lounge chair in the backyard, and you can play Blackbeard the Space Pirate. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm amazed that they're putting that thing on the Switch, but I shouldn't be, because Skyrim's on the Switch. I just got Wreckfest on the Switch, which is a PC racing game, and if you told me I was playing a PC game, I'd believe you, because on the Switch it looks almost as good and runs like butter. I don't know how they're doing this stuff on the Switch, but it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, part of it is the new software they're starting to come out with, and part of it also is just the optimization. Somebody really knows how to optimize a game, as opposed to like what a friend of mine calls spaghetti code, and that's left in an early version of the game engine he was using. But I think that's a lot of what happened. It's just they're good at optimizing.
It must be. It must be.
Yeah.
All right. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to moan about, or should we start wrapping up? Thorsten, you wanted to close with something positive, I think.
Yeah.
But also, yes, but
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jack.
I was mentioning that David had something to say as well, but that's for later.
Okay.
Thorsten, go.
Well, I want to end on a bit of a positive note, especially with Elite Dangerous, because the game itself. I mean, we mentioned it already. The flight model is great. The graphics are great. The music and the whole sound is great. It just does need a few tweaks to make it a really good and fun game. And the only thing I don't really understand is the fact that despite input from the players, Foundry didn't manage to do it. And I really, really hope that under the new management and hopefully a new designer, it manages to get its way. I mean, there are so many YouTubers who have put out videos showing what's wrong with the game, and I hope they manage to do it. Same for Star Citizen in some regards. I really hope they manage to do it. I don't want both projects to fail. Seriously, because it's everything we want. To be honest, we want a game to fly around, be Han Solo, and.
No, I totally agree with you. I completely agree with you. I would love it if these games succeeded. Would love if the game succeeded. But
I mean both games.
Yeah. I would love it. I would love it. I agree with you. I would love it if these games succeeded. It's just
if they were good.
It's just day after day goes by and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be surprised. I would, but
like I've said earlier, if Squadron 42 comes out, I'm gonna play it.
Yeah,
it might be garbage, but I'm gonna play it just for just for putting out something.
And David, did you want to say something before we wrap up?
I mean, I'm gonna bring down some more negativity here, though. So.
Oh, well, what do you want to? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I can start with something positive, as Forsen ended with something, or well, as something a curious observation. Star Citizen. So, people have bought ships, playing the friggin' alpha, and you know that people are not using those larger ships all the time, pretty much. Like the 890 jump and stuff that many newspapers are making architectural reviews about and stuff. They're not using those ships. They're using a little shuttlecraft. Why? Because it can land everywhere. It's hilarious. So basically, you have the guys who have spent multiple $100s on a spaceship, and then like, oh, look, this is a ship can land everywhere. It costs nothing, and it's available in game, and you can rent it for like nothing.
Oh God, really? Oh my God,
it's kind of fun to see.
Star Citizen is a great sightseeing game because a lot of the scope creep went into graphical fidelity.
Yep, especially when we come to the box missions. The Pisces, the shuttlecraft, is amazing doing that. So it's kind of fun to see that instead of running across half a ship. It's kind of in the little shuttlecraft. Yeah, it's pretty funny. So back to negativity. Elite Dangerous. Yeah. Did you guys hear about the Gnosis?
The what?
No.
Okay, another community group event happened. I believe it was 2 years ago, maybe 2019. So we have a player group called Canon, which are, well, they're saying that they are a science player group faction thing. So as soon as someone sends out a clue like, oh, the Fargoids are heading over here, they solve it within minutes. I don't know how to do it, but they do stuff. So player groups can also get a player-owned megaship, which they can move around every server reboot. And they saw something. So you guys may know that there are actual star systems that are permit-locked. I don't know how it works, but some systems are permit-locked. And Canon noticed something very interesting. Deep inside Fargoid territory, there was one star system that was not permit-locked. No ship, no matter how much you engineered it, could get to that system, but a megaship could. So they slowly but surely made a move with their megaship towards that destination every server reboot, and then they said to Frontier, "We're gonna jump there. Now, all our players, join us and see what's in there. Let's be explorers." You know what happened?
Did Frontier take the system away?
Yeah, pretty much. They locked the system, and then the next server reboot, the Gnosis was pretty much destroyed, and all players had to defend the ship. There's a little problem. No fire zone around the ship. So as soon as people left the ship, they were under attack by Fargoids, and they couldn't open fire on the Fargoids because they were in the no fire zone. So they were blown up by the friggin' Gnosis and then sent to internment camp many light years away. That was a fun time.
So that's what
I
happens
remember the incident now, yeah.
when Frontier attempts to do emergent gameplay, because that sounds really fun if they didn't mess up that part.
If they didn't hate their own players. If they didn't really hate their player base, maybe that could have ended up well. But I literally do think they immensely, at the very least, immensely dislike their own players. Anyway.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so I think we'll wrap it up there, my friends. I think we've bitched enough. So please understand that we want Elite and Star Citizen to be good. We wish they were. We want them to be. We would love it if they succeeded. But time and time and time again, they let us down. And that's that's where this all comes from. It's just the constant string of disappointment. Over and over again. You know? Fool me once, blah, blah, blah. Fool me 18 times? Come on. So
there's an upper limit to this shit.
Exactly. So, but we would love it if if Elite and Star Citizen got turned around and ended up being great. We would love it. No one would love it more than us. But anyway, so next week on the show, my friends, we're going to turn this on its head and we're going to talk about things we love. We're going to have a very positive, happy, fun time unicorn glitter show about fairies and happy things. So that's what we're gonna talk about next week. And we'll see if
it might be sunshine and rainbows. We don't know.
Sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, and someone's gonna steal my freaking kidney. And
that sounds so great.
No.
And so that'll be fun. And tomorrow we're going to return to Stunt Island for our last entry. I don't think it'll be a shorter show. There's a lot of stuff we actually love. There's a lot of stuff we could gush about. I do not think it'll be a shorter show.
Now, we wouldn't be doing this podcast if all we were doing is being reductive. Because if all we were doing was being reductive, then
just go watch Cinema
we'd lose
Sins.
our audience at that point.
What was that, Jacob? Just go watch what?
Just Cinema Sins.
What's that?
Cinema Sins is not really that good.
It's a channel about professionally nitpicking films.
Except they make up a lot of the things that they nitpick that are actually explained within the things they're nitpicking.
It's a channel about badly nitpicking films.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not really that good. It's not. No.
Oh.
Nah, Cinema Sins is pretty terrible, actually.
Well, we had a great chat today. Thank you, everyone, for being so active in the chat. That was a lot of fun. It was great seeing you all. Thank you so much for stopping by. And with that, we hope you're doing well. We hope you're staying safe. Take care of each other, please. And please, for the love of God, get vaccinated, especially against COVID. If there's is there a monkeypox vaccine? I think
Not
there
yet.
is. Oh,
Not
there
yet.
isn't? There isn't yet?
Not
Okay.
yet. They're
Okay.
working on it.
Okay, so at least get the COVID vaccine because eventually you're going to need the goddamn monkeypox vaccine, and then you're going to need the polio vaccine because polio's back, y'all.
No, admittedly, we have that one already. The good news is we have that one already.
Polio's back. Party time. Oh my god.
Again, good news. At least we have the vaccine for that.
I know, but for God's sakes. Okay, have a great one, everyone. Be safe. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.